Previously on 5 Points of Articulation. You can see these little bars here, and on this end there are little clips, but as you can see, those clips are very shallow, and as such, I cannot get these wings to stay on or clip into place. The slightest movement, and they fall right off. Oh no! Welcome to 5 Points of Articulation. In this corner, the Marvel Legends Deluxe Comic Style Sam Wilson Captain America, and in this corner, the Disney Plus Wave Build-A-Wings version. With the trailer for Captain America Brave New World having just dropped, and me dropping the ball in my review of the deluxe version, this is the perfect opportunity to figure out which Wilson is the best Cap for your collection. Starting off with the packaging, and I've already looked at this box. It's got a nice extra wide window to show you all the goodies you're getting, and features artwork from 2 different covers of Captain America Symbol of Truth. It was also beat up in shipping, but that's another story. I got the Build-A-Figure loose, but this one is an interesting case. Normally, Build-A-Figures are spread over multiple boxes, and that did happen here. But in this rare instance, Cap did get a box of his own, and the box did have some pretty nice key art from the show. Granted, the deluxe version has very impressive shelf presence, but point for point they are fairly equivalent. So equivalent that for packaging, this round is a draw. Moving on to presentation, and both Sams stand around 6¼ inches, or about 15½ centimeters. Since I did just dedicate an entire video to the comic book version, I'm gonna be kinda brief. Long story short, this version is complete reuse from a previous edition that was part of a 3-pack. That said, it has been given a spiffy new paint job, though admittedly, had they been able to use face printing technology, that would have been nice. There's lots of great paneling and ribbing, and to be honest, I feel like this costume was designed with adaptation into live action in mind, especially looking at things like the boots and gloves. With that being the case, it's no wonder just how good the Disney Plus costume actually looks. This really does feel like that comic design come to life. Obviously, it does have all those extra MCU-ifications, more panels, more textures, more seams. Still, this is one of the more faithful translations into live action. One of the things I particularly like are the translucent lenses that they used for the goggles. The comic book goggles are just painted on, and it's fine, but being able to see Anthony Mackie's eyes underneath really does add a level of realism. Another benefit to the Disney Plus version is that because it's a newer sculpt, it is pinless. One of the bigger criticisms of the comic version being that after all these years, they chose not to update that. Even without updating, this Sam is still pretty stellar, but the pinless joints as well as the extra sculpted and painted details tips the scales in the Build-A-Figure's favor. For presentation, this round goes to live action. Moving on to Poseability, and Disney Plus has a dumbbell joint, whereas the comic has a ball joint and a disc swivel. Unsurprisingly, the comic version can look up much higher and down much lower. That being the case, the MCU version is able to tilt his head. They can both turn all the way around, but the live action version has an extra joint in the base of the neck. It does not in any way add to the tilt, but if you want to, you can swivel it. Moving on down, and the live action version has these pointy shoulder pads. Those unfortunately get in the way of raising his arms. Neither one has any kind of butterfly joint, but both figures have bicep swivel and double jointed elbows with Disney Plus bending deeper and being pinless. At the ends of the arms though, and both figures have wrists that can swivel and hinge either up or down. Shifting to the torso, and both figures have an ab crunch and a waist swivel, but they were not engineered equally. The comic is great, but just look at the arch back on the live action version. I'm pretty sure even Elizabeth Olsen can't bend this far backwards. Notice that they didn't continue the sculpt or the stripes. Hunching forward in the Disney Plus version is also superior as well, though we might need to see a chiropractor. Since neither has a diaphragm joint, neither one can tilt, but both can twist. Below the belts, and both have ball jointed hips, they can kick about 90 degrees, with the live action version being just a hair higher and also having the deeper stance. Traveling down the legs, and both figures have thigh cut. They also have double jointed knee with a fairly equivalent bend, but again live action being pinless. But whereas both figures have ankles that can hinge and pivot, the comic version has the extra benefit of boot cut. In some areas like the elbows and torso, the live action version is better. In other areas like the neck, shoulders, and boot cut, the comic version's better. To make life easy for Poseability, I'm gonna meet in the middle and call this round another draw. Moving on to Playability, and let's just address the elephant in the room. Yes, I was completely wrong about these wings. wings. As many of you suggested in the comments, I simply did not push them in far enough. Now that I have, my mind is completely changed. The wings are very sturdy, and now that they're working properly, I actually like them a lot. That being the case, how do they stack up against the wings from the live-action Disney Plus version? Well, for one thing, the Disney Plus version has a whole extra hinge. While the comic version can only bend like so, the Disney Plus version has that bend, and also one up here. That said, the comic version gets a lot more up and down. By contrast, this is as far up and down as the live action can get. I'd also point out that this backpack isn't exactly secure. I even tried it on my Captain America 2-pack version of Sam just in case this one's hole was loose, but no, it's definitely the backpack. Also, I promise I am pushing it in as hard as I possibly can. Since I bought this used, it's always possible that the peg itself is worn out, so I am going to give the benefit of the doubt here. That said, I'd be remiss if I didn't point out the comic versions is nice and tight. One thing working against it though is how gappy the wings are, whereas here the joints are better integrated and less obvious. Of course, I'm sure some of you were curious, so here's the baff wings on the deluxe body. It technically fits, but the peg is even looser on this guy. But if you wanted to paint these red and glue it down, it would be pretty impressive. One thing I don't like as much about the live-action version, however, is its aesthetics. Don't get me wrong, Hasbro has sculpted and painted them beautifully, but both the wings and the costume being red, white, and blue is a bit busy, whereas the simple comic red version is a lot more striking and brings a lot more attention to Sam himself. That said, the Disney Plus Sam has been given an additional backpack for when the wings are not in use. This one's nice and snug at least. They also both come with shields. The Disney Plus one is the modified version that Steve handed off in the end of Avengers Endgame. It's pretty much the same as the original with more grooves sculpted in, and on that note I should point out that it's very nice to see all this sculpted detail. By contrast, the comic version is merely painted. That said, it's more accurate to the shield Sam had in the comics. Flipping it around though, all it has is a clip and a peg, whereas the live action version actually has sculpted straps and rivets. In the comic version's defense though, you can actually store that shield on his back. This Sam is stuck pretty much holding his forever. They've also given him red wing on this acrylic holder. It actually has a ball joint in the bottom so you can pose it. See that peg hole? It actually clips on like so. And you see that other peg hole? That's for an included flight stand. Just don't get too excited. You're not exactly getting any lift off. Still, given the flight stand and red wing and all the other accessories, it's hard to deny that this doesn't make for a very impressive presentation. Alternately, the only other accessories that the comic book version comes with is an extra pair of hands. If you want alternate hands for the live action version, they did make fists, but the only way to get that is in a 2-pack with Steve as he appeared in Avengers Endgame. Alas, the 2-pack does not include Sam's wings. To compensate, Hasbro's given him an alternate unmasked head. Even so, it's pretty frustrating that you have to buy 2 separate Sams just to feel like you're getting one complete figure. Fortunately, playability is more than just accessories. It's also about how well your figures play with others. Having just reviewed the comic version of Sam, I don't want to repeat myself too much. That said, here we have the retro card Falcon, but for someone else who had taken up the mantle of Captain America, and here we have Bucky. As for Steve, and here's the 80 years version, next up is the 20th anniversary, and everybody's favorite, Ultimate Cap. They don't call it the greatest generation for nothing! Moving over to the MCU, and here we have Endgame Steve from the Captain America 2-pack, and Zombie Cap from What If. This brings us to other Disney Plus figures to go along with Sam, figures like Captain Carter, or the What If version of Red Skull. Next up is Loki from the Tesseract box set. Shout out to my dad, by the way, for letting me borrow his. Here we have Sylvie, Miss Marvel, who looks nothing like Iman Vellani, She-Hulk, who I know is everybody's favorite, Moon Knight, which was one of my favorites, and as long as we're talking about ghostly white caped characters, here's Vision from WandaVision. Pulling every evil string, and here's Agatha Harkness, and Wanda, whose head I have not been able to find in months. Good news though, I did finally find the left hand of Nightfall Batman. For no particular reason, and here we have the leader, and just because they're military themed and I was curious how they scale, here they are with Storm Shadow from G.I. Joe Classified. Lastly, for a winged Build-A-Figure comparison, and here we have Vulture. Compared to Sam, Hasbro sunk a lot more tooling and plastic into this guy. Full disclosure, this one's the deluxe reissue, but you get the idea. Otherwise, and for a roll to scale comparison, here are Sam's with Pizza Spidey and the Spectacular Spider-Man, and as always, here they are with Stealth Iron Man. Weren't you just here? Now that I've gotten the wings clipped in place, I really love the deluxe version, but little things like extra articulation in the wings or the inclusion of Red Wing really set this one over the edge. For playability, this round goes to live action. This leaves us with nothing left to discuss but the price. On average, the Disney Plus version sells for about $50, but lists for as high as $70. Just keep in mind that if you want things like the Unmasked Head or Fist, you also have to buy the Captain America 2-pack. Conversely, this Captain America is available at retail right now for just $34.99. For price, this round goes to comic, but the battle goes to live action 4-3. Agree? Disagree? Sound off in the comments below. While you're down there, let me know how excited you are for Captain America: Brave New World. If you like this video, check out one of these. Thank you so much for watching. I'll be back again real soon, but until then, play nice and have fun.